Good evening. Tonight is the penultimate in our series of interviews with the Scottish party leaders. Before we hear from the Scottish Conservatives' Annabel Goldie, here's a brief reminder of how she got where she is now. Annabel Goldie went to school in Greenock before graduating with a law degree from Strathclyde University. She began her legal career working as a solicitor before later becoming a partner with a Glasgow law firm, a position she held for over 30 years. While there, she stood unsuccessfully as a candidate in the 1992 general election for the seat of West Renfrewshire and Inverclyde. Her involvement with the Scottish Conservative Party continued. She held numerous internal posts throughout the 90s. After campaigning against devolution, she was elected to the first Scottish Parliament as a list MSP for the West of Scotland, a seat she continued to hold in 2003 and 2007. In her early days at Holyrood, she was deputy leader to David McLetchie before taking over the top job in 2005 in the wake of the Taxigate affair, which led to Mr McLetchie's rushed resignation. As the first female leader of the Scottish Tory party, she is a self-styled action woman. Going into this election, she will have to defend David Cameron's cuts, while at the same time presenting her party as a separate Scottish entity. And, assuming she gets re-elected, she'll then face another vote. Lord Sanderson's recent review of the party recommended a leadership election straight after May's ballot. Well, just before we came on air, I asked Annabel Goldie what her big idea was for the election campaign.
Delivering for Scotland, building on the achievements of the last 4 years when we've delivered common sense policies, and delivering for Scotland over the next 4 years.
But that's not a policy, that's just a sort of ambition.
Well, I think it's, you said, what's the big idea? I think that's a very
good
policy
idea.
Well, I think that's a very good idea, and I mean, our policies have been all about common sense solutions for people. More police officers, 1,000 extra police officers, help with business rates, council tax freeze. I think these are policies that people find helpful, particularly in these challenging times.
Yes, but if you're going to ask for people to vote for you in the election, you're going to have something a bit more definite than that.
Well,
it's not you who've delivered the council tax freeze. You may have supported it. And it's not you who've delivered more police officers. You may have supported it.
Well, that's where I totally disagree with you. Without Conservative votes, these policies wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I know, but you're going to have to go to people and say, look, look, vote for us.
Well,
this is what we want.
Well, I think we're entitled to look at our record of delivery in the last 4 years, and I think we're entitled to say to voters, that's what you can associate us with, common sense policies, and we're going to give you more of that for the next 4 years.
Right, so give me a common sense policy that you want to press for the next 4 years.
Well, we'll continue. We've promised that we'll protect these extra police officers. We're pledged to do that. We've promised that we'll continue the council tax freeze for next year and the year after that. I think that's reassuring to voters in these difficult times. We're prepared to tackle some of the challenging situations that the Labour and SNP parties are not prepared to tackle, like how do we protect our Scottish universities? How do we make sure they've got adequate funding? We've come out with solutions for these. The other two parties are silent.
Right, so vote for you and you get a graduate tax.
Well, vote for us and you don't get a graduate tax. Vote for us and you get a sensible proposal for graduates, not students at university, but graduates, once they've got their degrees, to contribute towards the cost of their degrees and give our universities much needed additional funding.
And that's the only new thing you've mentioned.
No, of course it's not, Gordon. We've
vote
got a whole,
Tory, get a graduate tax.
We've got a whole raft of new policies. We've got new policies for school education. We want to give parents choice. We want to give teachers choice. We want to restore more control back to teachers in their schools. We've made clear that we've got exciting policies for health. We want to expand health visitors. We want to assist young parents with coping with their young children, giving every possible start in life. There's a whole raft of policies we've already come out with.
Right, now probably the main thing that most people who might be voting in this election have got from what your party's been up to over the last few months is that once this election is over, you get the sack.
No, I'm the leader of my party. Leaders obviously all have to put up with a degree of discord in their parties. That's what politics is all about. I mean, some people may disagree with you presenting Newsnight, Gordon, but you're presenting Newsnight, and I'm leader of the Scottish Conservatives, and I shall lead us into the election, during the election, and after the election.
Well, not after the election. No, you get the sack.
No, I don't get the sack. The Sanderson report, which looked at the structure of the party, made quite clear, and Russell Sanderson was explicit about this in his interviews, he said you can't possibly have Annabel trying to go with a leadership contest if she's maybe trying to negotiate post-election issues arising out of the result of the election.
But that's precisely what you're doing. There's going to be, you're going to get the sack after the election.
No, because...
Yes, you are.
The Sanderson report, if that's what you're referring to, Gordon, said there should be a structure for leadership elections in the party in Scotland, with which I entirely agree. But Russell Sanderson made clear that he was not talking about the day after the election.
Well, the month after the election.
Well, he was making clear that, of course, there could be other issues that had to be addressed by the leader of the party at that time, and it was right that these issues are addressed. We don't know what the result of the election is going to be. We don't know what the voters will determine, and... you know,
You can't. Look, you're putting a brave face on this, but you can't be. I mean, what political genius came up with an election strategy of let's fight in the election and say we'll sack our leader afterwards?
Well, that's not the strategy, Gordon.
But it is.
And it's not. And Russell Sanderson was perfectly clear about that in interviews. I mean, what his report proposes is a perfectly sensible system for leadership elections. I don't have a problem with that. But he was also very clear that it would not be appropriate to have that immediately in the aftermath of an election for obvious reasons.
Right, but if it's soon after, it's hardly a ringing endorsement, is it?
Well, what he was pointing out was that the party in Scotland has got, quite rightly at the moment, a confused leadership, and it has. I'm the leader of the MSPs, there is an appointed chairman of the party, there is an elected deputy chairman of the party, and it poses a question, who's actually in charge? Which is a very fair question to pose. I think that had to be simplified. He's brought proposals forward to do that.
Right.
And, you know, I'll live with whatever the structure is, Gordon. That doesn't worry me. My task at the moment is I've got a campaign to lead the Conservatives into, I've got a campaign to fight for them, and then
right.
I hope for a positive outcome from that, and I'll lead us forward from that post-electoral situation.
When you get the sack, which you say you're not going to get, will you stand again?
I'm prepared to be leader for as long as I think it can be a positive...
So you will stand again?
Yes, I'm prepared to be leader for as long as I think it can be a positive influence for the party, Gordon, and that's what I'm pledged to do.
Right. But the whole point about the Sanderson report was Scottish Tories going nowhere fast needs shake-up and a bit of newness and freshness about it. Having exactly the same Scottish Tories as we had before isn't going to be doing that, is it?
Well, what he was talking about were structures, not people, not individual personalities. He made that clear, Gordon. And he's right. I think the structures of the party, have to be altered, and I think he's come up with positive proposals about how you do that.
Now, at this point, I should... I guess ask you who you would like to be in coalition with after the election. But your problem is, isn't it, that no one wants to be in coalition with you?
Well, my situation is that I want to fight this election in a positive manifesto of policies, and also building on that record of achievement that I was talking about. I think that's a good narrative to give to voters. I'm very clear that my goal is to get as much support for my party as I can, and I hope to increase the number of MSPs. Now, at the end of the day, it is up to voters as to what they deliver by way of a result. But I've made clear that I rule nothing in and I rule nothing out. Yeah,
but the problem is you suggested a few days ago, didn't you, that you might quite like to be in a coalition with Labour. And Labour politicians, they queued up to say, you must be joking, we're not going to have a coalition with them.
That was the headline of a newspaper report. If you read the report, actually, it made clear that I'd been unspecific. I simply said, I rule nothing in and I rule nothing out, because what I will do, Gordon, is make a judgment post-election according to what I think is in the best interest of Scotland. But what the Conservatives have shown is we've been pivotal in the last 4 years. We have been pivotal,
right,
and we intend to be pivotal for the next 4 years.
I mean, you've yourself referred to the fact that conservatism is still a toxic brand in Scotland to a large extent.
Well, I've never used that word.
Well, you wouldn't presumably disagree. I mean, presumably you would rather like it if the other political parties in a system which relies on coalitions were to drop this and to say, well, we might ally ourselves with the Conservatives. We might not. It depends what they've got to say.
Well,
no, they're not saying that. The SNP and Labour are not saying that. They're saying the SNP is a matter of principle and indeed constitution that they won't ally themselves with you. And Labour are just saying, well, we would rather drop dead
Let's just
first.
get back to the realities, Gordon. The realities of the Scottish Parliament are that we can either have coalition government or you can have minority government. In fact, I think the likely money is we'll have another minority government. I think that is the probable outcome.
And you would then, at that point, do what you have been doing so far, which is support it on an issue-by-issue basis if you felt you could.
Yes, if we could. And as I say, we have been pivotal in these negotiations over the last 4 years, and we have been the instruments of delivery of all these policies. It just wouldn't be there without the Conservatives, and we shall be pivotal for the next 4 years.
Right. So not a formal coalition, given that they've ruled you out. The other side of this, of course, is a lot of you people who are Conservative voters in Scotland will be saying, this is all a bit rum. The Scottish Tories have actually they've been propping up a nationalist government for the past 4 years.
Well, no, in fact, nobody's been saying that because I know exactly the basis on which we have lent support to certain SNP measures, particularly the budget. That basis has been in return for delivery of Conservative policies. And I haven't found anyone who's disagreed that 1,000 extra police officers was a very good idea. I haven't found anyone who has disagreed that help with business rates to keep small businesses from going under, which undoubtedly they would have done without that help, is not a good idea. People think these are good ideas. They think the council tax freeze has been a good idea. It's been helpful. They like our commitment to these policies. They like our determination to see these policies continue.
Look, the big problem you've had for 30 years now in Scotland is that the perception was created that the Conservatives imposed draconian cuts in public spending and people turned against them. You know, at one point you were the majority party in Scotland. You obviously would like to turn that round. It's a bit difficult, isn't it, when round about the time the election is going to be held, George Osborne will be imposing draconian cuts in public spending?
Well, I find people have a sense of realism, Gordon, about what is happening, and nobody's in any doubt about the extent of the mess which the Conservative coalition inherited. I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't have wanted to have to deal with that mess, but, you know, frankly, I'd rather the Conservative government was in Westminster dealing with that mess than Labour was in government making it worse.
Right. Now, just as a matter of interest, you said a moment ago you were hoping to get more MSPs. If you get fewer, will you reconsider your decision to stand again for the leadership once you get the sack, which you're not going to get?
Well, I deal with realities. I deal with the issues confronting me now. The issues confronting me now are to lead my party.
But if that should happen...
Well, the issues confronting me now, Gordon, are to lead my party up to a campaign and fight... Can I quote you something you said? Well, to lead my party...
I think people are fed up with to the back teeth of politicians who dance on a pinhead, who are evasive and ambivalent. Yes, so if you get fewer MSPs, will you stand again for the leadership?
Well, I'm fighting to get more MSPs, and I will deal with situations as they arise, Gordon. I'm fighting to do well in this election.
Pinheads, evasive.
Well, I'm fighting to do well in this election, and I think it's only fair to deal with situations as they arise, and then I'm perfectly prepared to advance an opinion about them if and when they do arise.
All right, we'll leave it there, Annabel Goldie. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.